Invisible and free. Invisible and free. After flying down her own lane, Margarita got into another that crossed the first at right angles. This patched up, darned, crooked and long lane, with the lopsided door of a kerosene shop where they sold paraffin by the cup and liquid against parasites in flacons, she cut across in an instant, and here she realized that, even while completely free and invisible, she still had to be at least somewhat reasonable in her pleasure. Having slowed down only by some miracle, she just missed smashing herself to death against an old lopsided street light at the corner. Dodging it, Margarita clutched the broom tighter and flew more slowly, studying the electric wires and the street signs hanging across the sidewalk. The third lane led straight to the arbot. Here Margarita became fully accustomed to controlling the broom, realized that it obeyed the slightest touch of her hands and legs, and that, flying over the city, she had to be very attentive and not act up too much. Besides, in the lane it had already become abundantly clear that passers-by did not see the lady flyer. No one threw his head back, shouted, "Look! Look!" or dashed aside, no one shrieked, swooned or guffawed with wild laughter. Margarita flew noiselessly, very slowly, and not high up, approximately on second floor level. But even with this slow flying, just at the entrance to the dazzlingly lit arbot she misjudged slightly and struck her shoulder against some illuminated disc with an arrow on it. This angered Margarita. She reined in the obedient broom, flew a little aside, and then, suddenly hurling herself at the disc with the butt of the broom, smashed it to smithereens. Bits of glass rained down with a crash, passers-by shied away, a whistle came from somewhere, and Margarita, having accomplished this unnecessary act, burst out laughing. On the arbot I must be more careful, thought Margarita, everything's in such a snarl here, you can't figure it out. She began dodging between the wires. Beneath Margarita floated the roofs of buses, trams and cars, and along the sidewalks, as it seemed to Margarita from above, floated rivers of caps. From these rivers little streams branched off and flowed into the flaming maws of nighttime shops. What a mess! Margarita thought angrily. You can't even turn around here. She crossed the Arbot, rose higher, to fourth floor level, and, past the dazzlingly bright tubes on the theater building at the corner, floated into a narrow lane with tall buildings. All the windows in them were open, and everywhere radio music came from the windows. Out of curiosity, Margarita peeked into one of them. She saw a kitchen. 2 primuses were roaring on the range, and next to them stood 2 women with spoons in their hands, squabbling. You should turn the toilet light off after you, that's what I'm telling you, Pelagia Petrovna, said the woman before whom there was a pot with some sort of eatable steaming in it, or else we'll apply to have you evicted. You're a good one yourself, the other woman answered. You are both good ones, Margarita said loudly, clambering over the windowsill into the kitchen. The 2 quarreling women turned towards the voice and froze with their dirty spoons in their hands. Margarita carefully reached out between them, turned the knobs of both primuses, and extinguished them. The women gasped and opened their mouths. But Margarita was already bored with the kitchen and flew out into the lane. Her attention was attracted by the magnificent hulk of an 8-storied, obviously just constructed building at the end of it. Margarita dropped down and, alighting, saw that the facade of the building was covered in black marble, that the doors were wide, that behind their glass could be glimpsed a doorman's buttons and peaked cap with gold braid, and that over the door there was a gold inscription. Dramlet House. Margarita squinted at the inscription, trying to figure out what the word Dramlet might mean. Taking her broom under her arm, Margarita walked into the lobby, shoving the surprised doorman with the door, and saw on the wall beside the elevator a huge black board and on it, written in white letters, apartment numbers and tenants' names. The heading House of Dramatists and Literary Workers above the list provoked a suppressed predatory scream in Margarita. Rising in the air, she greedily began to read the last names: Kostov, Dvubrodsky, Quant, Beskudnikov, Lachinsky. Lachinsky! Shrieked Margarita. Lachinsky! Why, he's the one who ruined the Master. The doorman at the entrance, even hopping with astonishment, his eyes rolled out, gazed at the blackboard, trying to understand the marvel. Why was the list of tenants suddenly shrieking? but by that time Margarita was already going impetuously up the stairs, repeating in some sort of rapture. Lachinsky 84. Lachinsky 84. Here to the left, 82, to the right, 85, further up, to the left, 84. Here. And the nameplate. 0. Lachinsky. Margarita jumped off the broom, and her hot soles felt the pleasant coolness of the stone landing. Margarita rang once, twice. But no one opened. Margarita began to push the button harder and could hear the jangling it set off in Lachinsky's apartment. Yes, to his dying day the inhabitant of apartment number 84 on the 8th floor should be grateful to the late Berlioz, chairman of Massillot, for having fallen under a tramcar, and that the memorial gathering had been appointed precisely for that evening. The critic Lachinsky was born under a lucky star. It saved him from meeting Margarita, who that Friday became a witch. No one opened the door. Then Margarita raced down at full swing, counting the floors, reached the bottom, burst out the door and, looking up, counted and checked the floors from outside, guessing which precisely were the windows of Lachinsky's apartment. Undoubtedly they were the 5 dark windows at the corner of the building on the 8th floor. Convinced of it, Margarita rose into the air and in a few seconds was stepping through an open window into an unlit room, where only a narrow path from the moon shone silver. Margarita ran down it, felt for the switch.